My daughter said, "I've decided to sell your farm to fund my husband's new business venture. He's more important than you. You have 48 hours to pack up." I just nodded. She didn't know the farm was already in someone else's hands. I'm so glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story until the end, and let me know which city you're tuning in from. That way, I can see how far my tale has reached. I nodded when my daughter uttered those words, but inside, I was as calm as a still summer pond on a windless day. She had no clue what was truly unfolding beneath the surface. Let me take you back about 8 months earlier, when everything in my life still felt as ordinary and predictable as the changing seasons on the farm. I was Eleanor Watkins, 72 years old, living on the sprawling 50-acre farm in the heart of rural Iowa that my late husband Thomas and I had poured our hearts into for 48 long, rewarding years. Thomas had passed away 4 years prior from a sudden heart attack while out mending fences one crisp autumn morning, leaving me not just the land, but a modest retirement fund from his years as a crop consultant, and a treasure trove of memories that lingered in every creaky floorboard of the old farmhouse, every weathered tool in the barn, and every weathered tool in the barn, and every weathered tool and the ward corn that swayed in the way of core, and every ward corns at a uwe core, with koi, and cran, ekin kit pong, kin I mat I can, if you web I got. I can my to like would be at I never have my we were hard it my car protect I make we get the missap wall instead of like so that make I was hitting quick as a more mess back to me was still did more less back was that my days were simple but fulfilling. I'd rise with the sun to tend to my vegetable patch, where I'd grow heirloom tomatoes, sweet corn, and zucchini that I'd share with neighbors. I'd volunteer at the local community food bank, sorting donations and chatting with folks who'd known Thomas and me since we were newlyweds. And I'd look forward to my daughter Sarah's monthly visits, always on the first Saturday of the month, when she'd arrive with a homemade apple pie, her specialty, baked with the tart Granny Smiths from our own orchard. Or at least, that's how it used to be. Back when our relationship felt like the sturdy oak tree Thomas had planted on our wedding day, its roots deep and unshakable. The first red flag waved subtly last March, during what should have been a routine phone call. Sarah rang me on a Tuesday evening, not her usual weekend slot, her voice carrying an edge I hadn't heard since her teenage years. "Mom, that farm's way too much for one person to handle alone, don't you think? All those acres, the maintenance's got to be exhausting at your age." Her tone was slick, reminiscent of when she was a child angling for extra allowance money to buy candy at the county fair. "Jack and I were talking about it last night over dinner, and we think maybe it's time to consider selling and moving into something smaller, more manageable. You know, for your own good. Think about how nice it would be to have less worry." I dismissed it lightly at the time, chalking it up to genuine concern after all. My knees did ache after a long day weeding, and the winters were getting harsher on these old bones. But deep down, a small seed of unease took root. The calls became more frequent after that, sprouting into something more insistent, like weeds overtaking a neglected field. "Mom, have you given any more thought to what we discussed about downsizing?" she'd ask, her words laced with impatience. "Mom, Jack did some research and found this cozy retirement village just outside Des Moines. It's got all the amenities, like a community center and shuttle service. Mom, you're not as spry as you used to be. What if something happens out there all alone?" Each conversation chipped away at the warmth we'd always shared, leaving behind a growing chill. My son-in-law Jack, who'd once spent weekends helping Thomas repair tractors and sharing beers on the porch while swapping stories about the latest farm equipment innovations, now barely contributed during their visits. Instead, he'd sit with his eyes glued to his smartphone, muttering under his breath about investment opportunities and scaling up, offering me only curt nods and forced smiles. By early May, the pretense had dropped like a heavy rainstorm, revealing the barren truth underneath. They showed up unannounced one Friday evening as I was finishing up canning some strawberry jam from the spring harvest. Jack strode through the farmhouse like a self-appointed appraiser, his boots tracking mud across the linoleum kitchen floor I'd scrubbed that morning. He critiqued everything in sight: the outdated Formica countertops, the inefficient layout of the rooms, and what he called the underutilized expanse of fertile land stretching out to the horizon. Sarah trailed behind him like a shadow, echoing his every word with nods and agreements that felt scripted. "This place could easily fetch over $800,000 in today's market, Mom," she said, avoiding my gaze as she traced her finger along the windowsill, collecting a speck of dust. "With the booming demand for rural properties near the city, you could sell it quick, get yourself a nice little condo in town, and still have plenty left over for whatever comes up, for your care, and maybe even helping out the family a bit." "Helping out with what, exactly?" I pressed, feeling my stomach tighten like a knot in a fence wire. "Oh, she hedged, glancing at Jack, who was now outside peering into the barn with a greedy glint in his eye, as if mentally calculating the value of Thomas's old John Deere tractor. "Just general stuff, your medical bills if they pile up, or contributing to the grandkids' college funds someday. Family things." But that's when it all clicked into place for me, sharp and clear as a lightning bolt splitting the sky. This wasn't about my well-being, or some altruistic concern for my golden years. This was about their wants, their desires, their insatiable appetite for more. Jack had quit his steady job as an auto mechanic 6 months earlier to chase what he called entrepreneurial ventures. Fancy talk for half-baked schemes like dropshipping gadgets online, or flipping used cars that never seemed to pan out. I'd seen Sarah's social media posts, filled with envy-inducing images of designer handbags, spa retreats, and weekend getaways to Chicago, all while their credit card bills mounted like haystacks in harvest season. Over the following weeks, I watched in quiet heartbreak as my daughter transformed into someone I barely recognized, her once vibrant spirit overshadowed by Jack's grandiose dreams and manipulative influence. Sarah, who had been a dedicated elementary school teacher, passionate about shaping young minds, had taken a leave of absence to support Jack's business, but I suspected it was more about avoiding the embarrassment of their mounting debts. I'd catch glimpses of the strain during their increasingly rare visits, dark circles under Sarah's eyes from sleepless nights, arguing about money, Jack's forced optimism cracking under the weight of failed investments. Yet, instead of pulling together as a family, they turned their gaze outward, fixating on my farm as the golden ticket to their salvation. Jack would drop not-so-subtle hints about how prime development land like mine could be subdivided into luxury home sites, while Sarah would reminisce about childhood memories on the farm, only to pivot to how times change and we all have to adapt. The situation escalated dramatically in late June, when they arrived one sweltering afternoon with a land developer in tow, without so much as a courtesy call. I had just returned from delivering fresh produce to the food bank, my pickup truck still loaded with empty crates, when I spotted the shiny black SUV parked in my driveway. Inside the house, a slick-suited man named Mr. Harlan was pacing my living room, clipboard in hand, discussing subdivision potential and market valuations with Jack, who pointed out prime building lots through the window. Sarah hovered nearby, fidgeting with her necklace, a gold chain Thomas had given her for her 21st birthday, voiding my shocked stare. "What in God's name is going on here?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Mr. Harlan extended a hand, all smiles and salesmanship. "Mrs. Watkins, pleasure to meet you. Your daughter and Sunina invited me to assess the property's development value. With the right zoning changes, this could be a gold mine." I turned to Sarah, my heart pounding. "You brought a stranger here to carve up your father's legacy without even asking me," Jack interjected smoothly. "Eleanor, we're just exploring options. For everyone's benefit." I asked them all to leave, my tone leaving no room for argument. Jack scoffed dismissively. Sarah mumbled a half-hearted apology as they drove off, leaving dust clouds in their wake. But that incident was merely the precursor to the real thunderclap that would change everything. Nothing could have prepared me for the confrontation 2 weeks later, on a stormy Wednesday afternoon that mirrored the turmoil in my soul. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Sarah burst through the creaky screen door, rain dripping from her coat, Jack looming behind her like a dark cloud. Her face was flushed with determination, her eyes hard and unyielding eyes that once sparkled with joy when we'd baked cookies together in that very kitchen. "Mom, we're done beating around the bush with this," she declared, slamming a folder of papers onto the oak dining table Thomas had built with his own hands. "I've made the decision, I'm selling the farm." I set down my cup of chamomile tea, blinking in disbelief. "You're selling my farm? The one your father and I built from nothing?" "Jack needs serious startup capital for his new tech app idea. It's revolutionary, Mom, a game changer in e-commerce. He's my partner, my future, and right now, He's more important than you holding on to this dusty old place that's way too big for you anyway. You don't need 50 acres to grow a few vegetables. Her words tumbled out in a rehearsed rush, as if she'd practiced them in the mirror. I'm giving you 48 hours to pack up your essentials. We've already talked to a lawyer about it. Since Dad left the property to you outright without any trusts or restrictions, and considering your advancing age, we can make a strong case for guardianship if you fight this. It's for your own protection. Really. Jack stepped forward then, his voice dripping with false sincerity, like oil on water. Eleanor, think of it as a fresh start for all of us. We'll find you a nice spot in that retirement village we mentioned, safe, comfortable. No more worrying about leaky roofs or frozen pipes in winter. My daughter, the child I'd nurtured through fevers and first heartbreaks, the one Thomas and I had sacrificed vacations and luxuries for so she could attend college debt-free, now stood in our family home threatening to declare me incompetent just to fund her husband's latest whim. The betrayal stung deeper than any bee from the hives Thomas used to keep. But instead of lashing out, I nodded slowly, forcing a neutral expression. I understand, Sarah. 48 hours it is. Her brow furrowed slightly at my lack of resistance, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. Jack, however, smirked triumphantly, as if he'd won some grand negotiation. They left without another word, Jack's heavy boots thudding on the porch like a victory march, the rain now pouring in sheets outside. The moment the door latched shut, I sank into Thomas's worn rocking chair by the window, the one where he'd sit reading the Farmer's Almanac on quiet evenings. The weight of their words pressed down on me like a heavy bale of hay, but beneath the initial shock and hurt, a spark of clarity ignited. My own flesh and blood had just plotted to dismantle my life for their gain. How had Sarah, the girl who once cried over an injured bird we'd nursed back to health, become this, influenced by Jack's charisma and promises of wealth? No doubt he'd always had a silver tongue, charming her away from her stable teaching career into his world of risky ventures. But as the storm raged outside, something else stirred within me, a cold, resolute anger that sharpened my thoughts rather than clouding them. They'd made a critical error. They'd assumed I was helpless, a relic of the past, too frail to fight back. They had underestimated me profoundly. That night, as lightning illuminated the fields, I climbed the attic stairs with a flashlight and retrieved the thick envelope I'd hidden beneath loose floorboards 3 weeks earlier. Inside were the documents that would turn the tide, the sale contract for the farm, closing papers, and bank statements confirming the $825,000 deposit. I'd sold it to a young couple, the Millers, Ethan and Mia, both in their 30s, with dreams of starting an organic farm and community-supported agriculture program. They'd approached me at the local farmers market, their enthusiasm reminding me of Thomas and me in our early days. The deal had closed swiftly. They'd paid mostly in cash from a family inheritance and a grant for sustainable farming. In a gesture of kindness, they'd agreed to let me lease the property back for 9 months while I sorted my next chapter. At the time, it had felt like a practical step toward eventual retirement. Now, it was my secret weapon, a shield against their greed. My hands trembled slightly as I leafed through the papers, but not from fear, from the budding excitement of a plan taking shape. First, I needed to arm myself with knowledge. I fired up my laptop. Yes, this 72-year-old widow knew her way around technology, thanks to online classes at the community center, and delved into Iowa guardianship laws. What I discovered fueled my resolve. Establishing guardianship required substantial proof of incompetence, medical evaluations, court hearings, witness testimonies. It wasn't a tool they could wield overnight, despite their bluster. But the mere threat revealed how low they'd stoop. I spent the rest of the evening making detailed lists. What they knew about my finances, precious little, as I'd always been private about money, a habit from lean years early in our marriage, potential allies in town, and contingency steps if things turned uglier. They thought I was living hand-to-mouth on Thomas's pension and Social Security, oblivious to the $250,000 I'd amassed in diversified investments over decades of frugal living and smart stock picks guided by a trusted advisor. That was their first and most damning mistake. By midnight, as the storm subsided, I had the framework of a strategy. I wouldn't reveal the sale immediately. That would be too merciful, too abrupt. No, I'd let them dig their hole deeper, expose their true colors to themselves and others, force them to confront the monsters they'd become. Then, when the moment was ripe, I'd yank the rug out from under them with precision. The next morning, I called my lifelong friend Louise, a retired nurse who'd known Sarah since she was in pigtails and diapers. "Eleanor, it's barely dawn. What's the emergency?" she answered, her voice groggy but alert. "I need your help with something big, Louise, and I need you to swear secrecy, not a word to anyone, not even your bridge club." There was a pause, then her resolute reply. "You got it, hun. What's the plan?" I explained the bare bones. "I need a safe spot to store some things, and your pickup truck for a discreet move tomorrow, while Sarah's at her part-time job." "Sarah's involved." "Oh, Eleanor, I'm in. Pick me up at 8. Louise arrived promptly at 8 a.m. with her son's borrowed pickup, her face etched with concern as I handed her the meticulously prepared list. "You're absolutely sure about this?" she asked, glancing around the farmhouse as if seeing it anew. "Completely," I affirmed. We worked methodically, room by room, boxing up the irreplaceable treasures: Thomas's Purple Heart Medal from his Vietnam service, the family Bible with generations of birth and death dates inscribed, handmade quilts from my grandmother, stacks of photo albums chronicling Sarah's childhood from her first steps in the barnyard to her high school graduation, where she'd given a speech thanking us for our unwavering support, and all my important financial documents, including the farm sale papers. By 2 p.m., the truck was loaded, and we stashed everything in Louise's secure garage, hidden behind boxes of holiday decorations. The farmhouse looked unchanged on the surface, but it felt hollowed out, much like how their betrayal had hollowed my trust. At 3 p.m., I drove to my attorney Harold Jenkins's office in town. Harold, a no-nonsense lawyer in his late 60s who'd handled Thomas's will and known our family for over 2 decades, had cleared his schedule when I'd called that morning with an urgent matter. Seated in his wood-paneled office, surrounded by shelves of legal tomes, he leaned forward. "Eleanor, you look like you've been through the ringer. Tell me everything." I laid it all out: the escalating pressures, the uninvited developer visit, the guardianship threat, Jack's schemes. His expression grew stormier with each detail, his pen scratching furious notes. "Do you have any concrete proof of these threats?" he asked. I pulled out my phone and showed him the text messages Sarah had sent to her Aunt Clara, my sister Na, who'd forwarded them to me after I'd confided in her the night before. The texts were damning. "Mom's being so stubborn about the farm. Jack says if we go for guardianship, we can sell it and fund the app fully. It sounds harsh, but she's old, she'll be fine, in a home, and we need this to get ahead." Another, Min_replies if she fights, but the lawyer thinks age is on our side. Harold's jaw tightened. "This is textbook attempted elder financial abuse, Eleanor, exploitation with intent to defraud. We could pursue a restraining order right now if you want." "Not yet," I said calmly. "I have a plan, but I need you to make it bulletproof." I outlined my strategy in detail, letting them proceed with their illusions, gathering more evidence, then striking with the revelation of the sale. Harold's eyebrows rose progressively higher, but by the end, he was nodding thoughtfully. "It's unorthodox, but entirely legal. And given what they're pulling, it's justified self-defense." We spent the next 2 hours refining every angle, drafting protective letters, preparing affidavits, and outlining legal countermeasures. By 5 p.m., as I left his office with a folder of fortified documents, I felt empowered, like a farmer arming against a coming frost. Pulling into my driveway, my heart skipped. Sarah's car was there early, parked crookedly, with Jack's truck behind it. They'd come home from work prematurely, perhaps sensing something amiss. Steeling myself, I entered the house. They were in the living room, Jack lounging on Thomas's recliner as if he owned it, Sarah pacing. "Mom, where have you been all day? We've been calling you. Had us worried sick." Sarah's concern sounded rehearsed. Jack chimed in. "The developer's scheduled for tomorrow morning to take photos and start the listing process. Better start packing those boxes." I poured myself a glass of water from the kitchen sink, my back to them, hands steady. "Is that so?" They exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of suspicion and anticipation. As they left, I overheard Sarah whisper to Jack on the porch, clear as day. "See? I told you, she'd fold eventually. Old folks always do when you push hard enough." I locked the door behind them and immediately called Harold. "They've taken the bait, developers coming tomorrow. Time for phase 2. "On it," he replied. "Stay strong, Eleanor." The next morning, at 10 a.m. sharp, the developer Mr. Harlan arrived, his SUV gleaming in the sunlight. "Mrs. Watkins, good to see you again. Your daughter arranged for me to photograph the property for the market listing." He extended his hand, all professional cheer. I smiled pleasantly, but didn't shake it. There's been a misunderstanding, Mr. Harlan. This farm isn't for sale, at least, not by Sarah or Jack. His brow furrowed in confusion. But Mr. and Mrs. Thompson said they don't own it. I do. I handed him a copy of the current title deed, along with a stern letter on Harold's firm letterhead explaining the situation and advising him to verify public records. If you have questions, contact my attorney. He scanned the documents. His face smiling as realization dawned. I'll need to call them. This could be a problem. Please do, I encouraged. And if they insist otherwise, tell them the records don't lie. He retreated to his car, phone in hand, making urgent calls, first to Sarah, then presumably his own legal team. My phone began ringing minutes later. Sarah, then Jack, voicemails piling up with increasing desperation. Mom, what the hell did you tell him? Call me back right now, this isn't funny. I silenced the ringer and enjoyed a quiet cup of tea on the porch, watching the cornfields sway. By noon, they stormed back, faces red with fury, slamming car doors. You sabotaged everything, Sarah shrieked, bursting inside without knocking. Jack loomed, fists clenched. The developers threatening to report us for fraud. Do you have any idea what you've done to our plans? I closed the door calmly, blocking their advance. I told him the truth. This is my farm, and you have no authority to sell it. Sarah's eyes blazed like wildfire. You're clearly confused, Mom. Maybe it's time for that doctor's evaluation we talked about. Get you checked for memory issues or dementia. The threat hung heavy in the air. That's when I pulled out my phone and played the voice memo. I'd discreetly recorded during their previous visit their explicit threats about guardianship and selling the farm echoing crystal clear in the room. Their faces drained of color. That's taken out of context. Sarah stammered. Is it? I countered, then displayed the texts from Clara on my screen. Their plotted scheme in black and white, and this planning to declare me incompetent while knowing full well I'm not. Jack grabbed Sarah's arm. She's been recording us trying to trap us like criminals. You've trapped yourselves, I said firmly. Now, get out of my house, or I'll call the sheriff. Sarah's composure shattered completely. You'll regret this, you old fool. You'll rot alone on this God-forsaken farm, with no one to care for you when you fall ill or break a hip. We're the only family you've got, and you're throwing us away. Her words cut deep, stirring fears I'd buried to marges of lonely nights, unanswered calls for help. But I stood my ground. If you're my family, act like it. Family doesn't steal or threaten. Now leave. Jack tried one last bluff. This isn't over. But they left, the door slamming so hard it rattled the windows. I sank into a chair, shaking from adrenaline, but a sense of victory bloomed. I'd confronted them head-on, yet doubts crept in. Was I too stubborn? Would isolation be my price? No. I reminded myself their care was conditional, laced with greed. I called Louise. Can I come stay for a few days? I need space to breathe and think. Pack a bag, the guest room's ready, and I'll have pot roast waiting. The next 3 days at Louise's were a balm for my weary soul. We talked late into the nights about old times, shared laughs over photo albums I'd brought, and she reassured me. You did the right thing, Eleanor. No mother deserves that from her child. Her husband Ben grilled steaks and told bad jokes to lighten the mood. I slept deeply for the first time in weeks, the emotional toll lifting like fog burning off in the morning sun. On the third evening, as we sat on her porch watching fireflies dance, Louise squeezed my hand. Whatever comes next in your plan, I'm with you all the way. I nodded, my mind sharpened by rest. It was time to advance. Returning home Thursday morning, I found a letter slipped under the door login stationery, Sarah's neat handwriting. Dear Mom, Jack and I are so sorry for pushing too hard. We were wrong to pressure you about the farm. You have every right to stay as long as you like. Can we start fresh? Please come to dinner this Sunday. Jack wants to apologize in person. We're family, and families work through their differences. Love, Sarah. The trap was obvious in the phrasing. As long as you like, implying temporariness, not ownership. My phone buzzed with texts from Jack. Eleanor, I overstepped. Let's talk. Sarah, I miss our chats, Mom. Need your wisdom now more than ever. Flowers arrived, Friday, a lavish bouquet of lilies and roses, card reading, forgive us, we love you. I donated them to the nursing home down the road, where they'd brighten someone's day. Saturday brought a gourmet gift basket, cheeses, wines, chocolates from a high-end store, another card, thinking of you, let's reconcile. I raffled it at the food bank's weekly event, raising funds for families in need. Sunday morning, Sarah appeared alone, knocking softly. I watched from the window as she fidgeted on the porch before opening the door, but not inviting her in. Mom, did you get the letter? Will you come to dinner? Jack's making your favorite apple crisp from Dad's recipe. Her eyes pleaded, but I probed deeper. What's the real agenda here, Sarah? She blinked. No agenda, just family time. Rebuilding what we broke. But her voice wavered slightly. Jack needs his mother-in-law's guidance. We've been so lost. I studied her face, searching for the girl who'd once confided her dreams to me. There's no trust left, Sarah. If you're serious, get counseling, real help for your marriage, your finances, without dragging me into it. Show me change, not words. You're being unreasonable, she cried, desperation creeping in. I'm your only child, doesn't that mean anything? It means everything, I said softly. Which is why your betrayal hurts so much. But being family doesn't give you license to abuse me. She left in tears, but I felt no guilt, only certainty. Word of the conflict spread through our tight-knit community, likely via Clara's discreet whispers. At the food bank that afternoon, volunteers pulled me aside with offers of support. Eleanor, if you need anything, meals, rides, even just company, say the word, said Patricia, the coordinator. We've got your back. Neighbors stopped by with casseroles, sharing stories. Sarah's always had her entitled streak. Bless her heart. Jack's influence hasn't helped. You're not alone. We've known you and Thomas forever. That counts for something. Their kindness bolstered me. I'd built a network of genuine friends over years of community involvement, something Sarah and Jack had never valued. 10 days of relative peace followed, lulling me into cautious optimism. Then, they returned on a Wednesday evening, as dusk fell, their faces wearing masks of contrived concern. Mom, can we come in? No tricks, just to talk, Sarah pleaded. Against my better judgment, perhaps hoping for a glimmer of sincerity. Let them inside. Jack sat stiffly on the couch, Sarah beside him, hands folded demurely. Eleanor, I owe you a heartfelt apology, Jack began, his voice uncharacteristically humble. I've been selfish, chasing dreams at your expense, Sarah added, tears welling. We've started counseling with Dr. Hale at the Wellness Associates in town, 2 sessions already. And we traded in Jack's fancy truck to pay off some debts. Here's proof. She handed me a folder. Therapy appointment confirmations, credit card statements marked paid, a dealership receipt for $35,000 trade-in credit. It looked convincing at first glance. This is a positive step, I conceded warily. Their faces lit up. Then Sarah continued. So, about the farm, nothing bad, but maybe add us to the title for emergency purposes. To avoid probate hassles if, God forbid, something happens. It'd show you trust our change. The trap revealed, baited with feigned remorse. Get out, I said, voice like steel. You came with lies and props, thinking I'd fall for it. Facades crumbled. Those docs aren't fake, Jack protested. But, I'd already planned. A quick call to Wellness Associates earlier confirmed no Dr. Hale existed there, and a friend in banking spotted the photoshopped statements, mismatched fonts, altered dates. You're done here, I declared. Sarah's mask shattered. You ungrateful old woman, clinging to this dirt pile like it's gold. You'll die alone, forgotten. Jack dragged her out as she ranted. Shaken but resolute, I retrieved Harold's folder. The final phase was at hand. I scheduled the meeting for Friday at his office, neutral territory, with witnesses. They arrived 15 minutes late, dressed sharply, exuding false confidence. The conference room held me, Harold, Clara, and a rep from the Millers. Sarah froze. What's this ambush? Sit, Harold commanded. He outlined the evidence, fraught with the developer affidavit from Mr. Harlan, texts from Clara, recordings. Then the bombshell. I slid the sale documents across. The farm sold months ago to the Millers. Leased back to me. Silence, then explosions. You tricked us, Sarah wailed. The Miller rep confirmed. Legitimate sale. Cash paid. Options presented. Permanent no contact. Or face charges: elder abuse, fraud, forgery. Faces ashen. They begged. You wouldn't jail your daughter. Try me, I said. Blame flew between them. Jack pushed me. You wanted the luxury. I stood. You chose greed over love. Restraining order incoming. Walked out to their pleas and threats. Papers served Monday. Silence ensued. Weeks later, Clara updated. Divorce filed. Jack's app failed spectacularly. Debts overwhelmed. Sarah moved in with a friend. Jack to a cheap motel. Pity stirred. but accountability prevailed. Months on, Sarah sued for emotional distress. Harold dismantled it in court. Frivolous countersuit won. She paid $20,000 fees. Lifetime no contact. Jack's downfall deepened. Fired for embezzlement, uncovered during investigations. Relocated, starting over humbly. Lease ended. I bought a charming cottage in an active over 60s village. Gardens, classes, trips, farm flourishes, with Millers. Laughter echoes there again. Proceeds funded Thomas Watkins agricultural scholarships, $15,000 annually to 5 aspiring farmers from rural families. Thank you notes pour in, affirming legacy. Will allocates to charities. Sarah, nothing, as taken in life. New life brims, yoga, book club, theater, friends, like Dorothy and Maria. Full, healing. Clara, Sarah, arrested for identity theft. Cards, in others' names, facing prison. Therapy begun. Rock bottom hit. Derek's, Sarah's letter. Mom, wrong, all along. Happy you're thriving, sorry, filed away. Perhaps reconciliation someday, but peace reigns now. Lesson, love demands boundaries, family owes respect. I nurtured, now I nurtured me. If your child betrayed thus, stand firm. Share, you deserve kindness. Thanks for listening. Take care.